I can't hardly do any of those songs from back then without thinking. I had a great uncle that was a fantastic guitar player. He was 93 or so when he died. That's right, ain't it, Mom? My mom's here, sitting next to Elvis Presley in the back. And about 1973, I guess it was, we had a preacher coming to the little church. He was from Chicago. And I knew about Chicago because all my relatives were older, all my grandfather and that whole generation. And I knew Chicago was where Al Capone was from, and they wore two-tone shoes and pinstripe suits, so that had to be cool. So I couldn't wait to see this guy. And but the day that it was coming, Uncle Harv was the caretaker of the church, and he was the fellow that went over and unlocked the church and let everybody in to get prepared and that sort of thing. And this huge truck come in. Now, I was used to the coal trucks. I'd seen those, and I'd seen tractor and trailers, but I'd never seen a truck like this. They pulled it in there, and I was kind of Uncle Harv's shadow. I was there with him pretty much all the time. And they had this big deck on the back of it and lowered down. They bought this thing out, and it was coated in blankets and had ropes around it. And I couldn't, what was this thing? And they unloaded it and took it in and took the blankets off, and it was an electric organ. I'd never seen anything like that thing. It was huge, had pedals on it and 2 keyboards, and it was made of genuine simulated wood. Just an incredible thing. Now, that church was about the size of this room, and they set up a sound system that looked like something that Aerosmith would have used or something. And when the preacher got there, I was real disappointed. He had a double knit polyester leisure suit on. Green. Remember that very clearly, green and brown. So he got in there, and him and this organ player had this thing orchestrated. When he would say hell or something like that, the organ would hit that minor chord, and you were scared to death. And when he would say heaven, it would go into the major. And the thing was so loud. I was sitting on the second row with Uncle Harv. My grandparents were off to the stage left, and Uncle Jess was in front of us. Uncle Jess had 2 hearing aids in his ears. And when it got started, when he would hit that minor key on the low, the whole building would just, Uncle Jess turned the hearing aids down. Everybody sit there calmly. And Southern people, we are a unique culture. For those of you all that aren't Southern, we won't use the Y word. But Southern people we are bred to avoid confrontation at all costs. We will do everything polite. We will try our best to suit. We will make everything welcome till you corner one, and then they'll kill you. So when he was hitting this thing, and I can remember this just clear as day, the preacher said, "Let's pep it up a little bit." And he turned the volume up on that organ. And I looked up, and a crack went all the way across the ceiling of that church, through the plaster, all the way down the other end of it, and a piece of plaster fell out and hit my grandmother's hair. And she didn't say anything. She picked it out of her hair and got the tissue paper out of her pocketbook that she always carried, wrapped it in tissue paper, and put it in the pocketbook to save it for later. So, so after it was all done, people were congratulating the preacher, and he crawled in the inspirational Cadillac and drove off. And they loaded that big old organ up, and Uncle Harv was locking the church door, and they locked the truck up, and we're driving out of sight, and it took me years to understand what Uncle Harv said. He watched that truck drive out of sight, and he said, "Well, that was certainly a blessing." Southern people, yeah.